battlefield. Now, you may have heard this battle referred to as the Battle of Snicker's Gap, the Battle of Snicker's Ferry, Snicker's Ford, Island Ford, Parker's Ford, Castleman's Ferry, Castleman's Ford. There's a lot of names for this particular battlefield, but where the actual fighting took place is across the river at what's known as Cool Spring Farm, which is now a Catholic retreat center. Where you're at, if you get your map out on page 7, take a look here. You are at Judge Parker. You go up dead center in the middle, you'll see Ricketts, then Judge Parker. Parker's house is right behind us. This is hanging Judge Parker. This is the Parker that would preside over the trial of the John Brown conspirators in Charlestown prior to the Civil War. So, now, that's his house. That's where he lived. So, what's important here to note is, you know, we've got Jubal Early after he leaves Leesburg in the wagon raid on the 16th of July. He's going to leave a battalion of cavalry up in the gap. Where we made that left-hand turn there. You follow the road up through there, and you go out and you'll be looking out at Loudon Valley. Up there at the top on the eastern face is going to be the 37th Battalion Virginia Cavalry guarding the gap the night of July 16th and 17th. Now the pursuing forces that are lining up behind him, the closest forces at Percival is going to be the command of General George Crook. George Crook has been given field command of all the troops from Major General David Hunter's Army of West Virginia. Ostensibly, Hunter's the guy he retreated into the wilds of West Virginia and opened the Shenandoah Valley for Early to invade Washington to begin with. Ostensibly, the Lincoln administration says, you know, General Hunter, you're senior to General Wright, but he's in command and he's the nominal commander of most of the troops in the pursuit of Jubal Early. So we don't want to offend your sensibilities and force you to serve under him, so you send General Crook out to the field with all the men. And so Crook is going to have with him here 3 infantry brigades that he'll place under the command of Colonel Joseph Thoburn and a small division of cavalry, about 1,800 men strong, commanded by the French-born Brigadier General Alfred Duffier. Now, with this force, it backed up, coming behind them and encamped around Leesburg, is the troops of Major General Horatio Wright. Wright's going to come under a lot of criticism for a lackadaisical pursuit. However, it's got to be noted, you know, one of his orders from General Grant are to, you know, push the enemy just far enough to ensure that they don't turn around and come back to Washington, D.C. There's hope that he might be able to isolate and inflict some serious damage upon Jubal Early, but there's also, in Wright's mind, is everyone hearing me on the mic? Okay. It's important to get these troops, again, about 12,000 men of the 6th Corps and thousands of men from the advance of the 19th Corps, back to the Richmond-Petersburg front so that General Grant can end the war in the summer of 1864. So as we listen to some of the quotes I may throw out later in the day, and if I don't, someone ask me what they think about Wright's pursuit when we get towards the end of the tour. Got to remember, he's got some conflicting direction here. So he's got to make sure that Early's retreating, but also once you're sure that he's going back, you come back. Now, on the morning of the 17th, Horatio Wright's going to give orders to George Crook to march out with his force troops at 4 a.m. from Percival. By 9 o'clock in the morning, they're at Snickersville, which is a small hamlet on the eastern face of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Now, when they get up there in the morning, excuse me, I'll just back up a little bit here. The day before, General Alfred Duffier had launched a reconnaissance in force out here and seized the gap on the 17th of July. Creates a stir in Berryville. They think this is the main pursuit force. John C. Breckinridge, early second in command, is in church in the Episcopal Church, and they rouse him out, interrupt the services, and they start sending troops back and putting them in position to protect against a Union attack. Now, I want to talk a bit about the big picture disposition. So if you'll turn back to page 5. And I want you just a little bit above dead center of that map is Crook with a big explosion, and then July 17th and 18th with representing Cool Spring right there on your map. That's where we are at essentially right now. Now Jubal Early is just west of there in the town of Berryville, about 4 or 5 miles. We passed through on the outskirts. At the time of the war, the road went right through the town. So Early has John Gordon's division positioned in the vicinity of the crossings. The actual crossings at the time of the war, the ferry is about 200 yards upstream or south of where the modern bridge comes across. Responsibility for guarding those crossings there was Gordon's division, backed up by a battalion of artillery. He will skirmish on the 17th with the reconnaissance and force that Duffier has located out here. And Duffier is going to stay out here, fall back into the gap, and hold that gap on the night of July the 17th. 4 a.m., as I noted, George Crook is going to move to the gap. Now, Jubal Early has positioned troops all around Clark County. About 4 miles north of us, with a site that we'll see later called Wycliffe Church, the largest division, probably about 3,000 to 3,300 men strong, under the command of the able and capable Major General Robert Rhodes, is in position, guarding, again, the far northern flank of Early's army. And he's in a position where he could turn if any threat comes down from the Harpers Ferry, Charlestown region. Now, if you look at your map, yeah, we don't have Berryville on there, but up facing north, the road that runs from Berryville to Charlestown, a couple miles north of Berryville, is the division of Stephen D. Ramseur. Any direct threats coming down there. Early will keep his final division, the 4th Division, under the command of Brigadier General Gabriel Wharton. This was originally Breckinridge's command from Southwest Virginia. These are the men who had been, 2 brigades had fought at Newmarket, and the 3rd Brigade had formed the backbone of the force that fought at the Battle of Piedmont. So they are going to be held in reserve just east of Berryville to go to wherever the emergency of the situation might dictate. When nothing develops on the evening of July the 17th, Jubal Early issues orders to all of his commanders. Have your men sleep on their arms tonight. Be ready to move. Be on the alert for the enemy. Someone should have had him issue orders like that before the night before the Battle of 3rd Winchester. But he's out here, he's on top of his game, and Early has his army well positioned. So well positioned in spots, and the fact that he has capable commanders that he knows, these are old 2nd Corps guys. Rhodes, Ramseur, and Gordon. These men have all risen to the top, and they've learned their trades on the many bloody battlefields that the Army of Northern Virginia had fought on. So one of the things that had happened, especially John Gordon's division, 2 of its brigades used to be divisions going into May. The Louisiana Brigade, which probably had about 2,500 men in 2 brigades on the 1st of May, now had 1 brigade with about 500 or 600 men in 14 regiments. The same thing, the Virginia Brigade under General William Terry and Gordon's division, it was composed of the fragments of about 14 regiments, including the old Stonewall Brigade, which only had about 500 men left in its ranks at this point. But Early's melding these men throughout the late spring and early summer of 1864. these men are coming to their own, and they've gained a lot of confidence saving Lynchburg and launching that raid to Monocacy. So this army, in spite of the heavy losses it's taken, is a force to be reckoned with out here. When Crook's men arrive at the Gap at 9 a.m. on the 18th of July, Crook's going to consult with one of the local cavalry commanders there, and who had tried to, he'd made a couple of attempts to get across and found that the Gordon's men were still there. And Crook decides that he needs to do something. He needs to get around that. So let's go back to map 7. And what he's going to do, he's going to send his infantry division under the command of Colonel Thoburn, about 5,000 men strong, coming through here, including 1,200 dismounted cavalrymen. These dismounted cavalrymen, it's not like 3 or 4 regiments. It's composed of the fragmentary dismounted units from probably almost every cavalry regiment in the Army of the Potomac. They just got turned in their equipment and were issued muskets and told to go out and join the infantry in the pursuit of Jubal Early. That's how desperate they were to get troops up here. So you've got these men who aren't used to walking, by the way, so there's probably a lot of straggling as they're marching out here. But anyway, when you drove in here, you notice as you were coming along, in between you on your left was the river, and on your right were the bluffs. Now, those bluffs are steep. What Crook is going to do is he's going to send Thoburn's division down behind that bluff, and they're going to come out right down behind the brown building. It used to be a golf course clubhouse and now serves as the Shenandoah U Visitor Center here. And Thoburn's mission is going to be to cross the river here at Island Ford, get across, and then move back upstream and attack Gordon on his left flank. It's an excellent plan if the only piece on the chessboard is Gordon's infantry division. But we know that's not the case. Crook and Wright are also going to make a tactical mistake here. They're going to send their cavalry division 9 miles south of here as the crow flies, he's Duffier, to try and break through at Ashby's Gap. Nothing will come of that. He'll be repulsed there on the next day. But most importantly, it removes the eyes and ears from the army. So instead of having some cavalry out here in front of Thoburn's division to go scout out rapidly on horseback distant locations and see what the Confederate dispositions are, Thoburn has only his slow-moving artillery. He will initially have with him 1 battery of artillery, the Upshur Battery from Upshur County, West Virginia, and Union artillery will deploy on those bluffs over there to the left of the Parker House. And there will be more artillery from the 6th Corps that will later arrive. So this is the mission with which Colonel Joseph Thoburn is going to go forward. And what we are going to do now is, I'm going to go around this and we're going to follow the trails down to the river, and we will begin to discuss how this mission unfolds. Again, most important, Thoburn conducted a flank march concealed from Confederate view behind the bluffs and emerges here to cross the river and head back, and the object of the mission is to attack Gordon's left flank.
How much of the battlefield is actually preserved?
What's preserved is, formally preserved, is all of this golf course area that you see to that direction. Pretty much you can see the end of it down where the bluffs kind of come in. So there's hundreds of acres here, I'm not sure.
How about across the river?
That's private property across the river. That's a Catholic retreat center. So
Why didn't he have any cavalry? What was the plot?
they sent them away.
Yeah, but
You know, so you have staff officers that are going to be carrying messages back and forth. So let's go head down to the river first. We'll get moving here.